My name is Lauren Eggert-Crow. I'm on the leadership team for Women Who Submit. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the organization, how the day will go, and then I'm going to introduce our two speakers for today. So Women Who Submit, we are a grassroots organization that works to empower women and non-binary writers to submit their writing for publication. We provide free professional development training in writing and publishing in order to break down barriers to publication and create a more gender equitable literary landscape. Yay. And the backbone of what we do is these submission parties that you're at today. So what's going to happen is we will have an hour of presentation by Rocio and Rachel. And then we will break out into two groups of new members and returning members to work on our submissions for the day. And our other leaders will explain that to you when we get to that part. So we have three other members of the leadership team today. We have Xochitl Julissa Bermejo, who is a co-founder and leader of Women Who Submit there. And today we are having a presentation on pay attention, attending and collaborating at the end/beginning of the world with Rocio Carlos and Rachel McLeod Kaminer.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Rocio Carlos, they, is a poet from Los Angeles. Her books include The Other House, From Civil Coping Mechanisms / The Accomplices, Attendance, and A Universal History of Infamy, Those of This America. Her poems have appeared in Chaparral, Angel City Review, The Spiral Orb, and Cultural Weekly. She was selected as a 2003 Penn Center Emerging Voices Fellow. Please welcome Rocio. And to my right, we have Rachel McLeod Kaminer. He's a writer, editor, and pathological reader who lives in Los Angeles. She grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains near the French Broad River. Her books are As in the Dark, Descend, also from Writ Large Press, and Attendance, which she co-wrote with Rocio. Rachel is founder of Wirecutter Collector, and she is currently working on something called the Water Year, which I'm very excited to hear about at some point. So please welcome Rachel. Without further ado, welcome to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Lauren said, pay attention, attending and collaborating at the end/beginning of the world. Does anyone feel like it might be the end of the world? We wrote a book called Attendance. And the idea of attendance was...
It looks like this with all the water damage.
Yes. So the idea of attendance, do you want to say kind of where...
Sure. So the reason that we all, I think, do this, and I used to call it taking attendance when I would go outside and just like look at all my little things in a row and what's going to happen and what I needed to do next and things like that. And maybe because I've been a teacher for so long, it was like calling roll call, right? Even when I was growing up, my parents were both rural. We would literally go outside and see what was going on in our tiny little yard with the lemon tree or the guava. And my parents were always just like renegade growers of stuff. My mom spotted a coffee plant at a nursery and nobody else knew what they were looking at. So she started growing coffee like when she was a girl in high school. My dad started growing cotton in the backyard. He was a cotton farmer when he was young with his family. So it's from a long line that I think all of us can tap into, like being observant to the natural world, even in a very urban environment.
Yeah. So if you have paper and a writing implement, we'd like you to write during this time. You might have, so it's okay to write digitally, and if that is something that you need to do, please write digitally. But for the purposes of passing things around today, we welcome you to write in a journal, or if you want to write on loose leaf paper.
Do you want to define attendance as a documentary with a
Sure. Are there any poets in the room too? How about people who would say they write hybrid work? Something a little more, Okay, cool. What are some of the other genres in the room today?
Short fiction.
Non-fiction.
Novel. Yeah.
Play.
Is that a poet writing a novel that I see over there? A play. Awesome. So we're really represented many genres here. We called attendance a few different things. We are poets, so whatever we write is probably poetry. But we also called it a work of documentary poetry. So that is, we are gonna offer you some ways to write kind of along the lines of what we've done. And I think that you could take this with you into whatever you're writing. But it's also partly just as a warm-up and to kind of bring you all together as a group for the day. And, oh yeah, so the reason I just had you take out your paper and pencils is I encourage you to write at the top whatever name you want to be called today, and take what we'll call creative notes just throughout our time together. So we'll introduce ourselves in just a minute, and if something catches your ear, maybe just write it down.
Does this, what we're writing, will that be passed around the room?
It'll be totally your choice. So if you want, you can even keep double bookkeeping.
Okay.
You know, so you don't have to pass anything at all today. There will be a time to pass things around, and if you'd rather kind of have that on a different sheet, so to speak, you could do that.
The way we wrote attendance was, a lot of prompting has to happen sometimes. Sometimes we need permissions to write. We have things that we want to express or process or just experiment. And at some point, we decided to give each other a constraint, right? Poets love constraints. And we said, okay, let's practice paying attention. Because we feel like the world is ending. Like, what can we salvage? What can we document before this all, whatever happens, our lives change forever? We don't know, right? Or we emotionally become different people, etc. So I decided I would take plants, and you decided you would take animals, so flora and fauna. And then those constraints, they have sort of these liminal spaces and these blurred boundaries as well. And so every month for a year, the year 2016, we would vigorously take notes, and that would be documenting, like, in our daily lives, our interactions with plants or animals and whatever fits in that idea, according to the poet. And then we would meet and read to each other, and then we would share each other's work with each other, like read it and then come back and then make poems from the notes. But by the end of 12 months of making pages and pages of notes and making pages and pages of poems, we're like, wait a minute, which part's the book? Are the poems the book? Are the notes not also the book? So it ended up that attendance is a book of, that's why it's a hybrid text, because it has everything in there. Right? There's no scaffolding that's stripped away to reveal this beautiful finished building. Everything is part of that. So that's why we were talking about taking creative notes, which could sort of be then, you can cull or curate parts of that to make a thing, or it can be part of the thing in its whole state.
Yeah. So practicing constraints and limitations, we'd ask you guys to go through and just say your first name or whatever name you want to go by, and one word or name of a plant or animal. Yeah. Just whatever comes to mind.
Can you say it again? Sorry, the prompt.
Yes. Your name. What name do you want to go by today?
Sochi.
Okay. And then if you want to share your pronouns, you can share your pronouns.
She, her.
And then a plant or an animal that's just like comes to the top of your mind. Maybe you saw it today. Maybe you've been thinking about it.
Fox.
Great. So Sochi said, Sochi, she, her, fox. That was a very limited amount of speech. So that's how we're all going to be able to share something right now. So I'll say Rachel, dandelion, she, her.
Rocio, she, her, they, them. Rosemary.
Cool. Maybe we can go this way.
Tisha. She, her. Succulent. I like that one.
Sibel, she, her, and Mattia, poppy.
Amalia, baobab, rabbit.
Okay. Oh, you're saying your name, your pronoun, and just a plant or an animal?
Mm-hmm. Just whatever comes forward. Maybe something you saw today, maybe something totally random.
Oh,
she, her, eucalyptus.
Dinah, she, her, giraffe.
Audrey, she, her, Phoebe.
Skylar, she, her, owl.
Maylin, she, her. I have no idea. I guess I'll say lavender.
Tammy, she, her, thistle. Mariko, she, her, juniper.
Alex, she, her, butterfly. Cool. Alright, so, Rocio and I did this when I was, when we were talking through this the other day, but the other day she said plumeria also. So I didn't know off the top of my head what it was, but I was drawn to the word, and she's a person in my life that I pay attention to. So I looked up the word plumeria on my phone, and I decided to take a couple notes. So the things that I found out are it's native to the Americas. Another name for it is dogbane. Don't let your dog eat it. And because there was a picture, I realized I have seen it before. I've seen it in my cousin's garden. So from one word and one sort of like entity or being, I just had a couple notes, and you can maybe see how you could keep taking some notes like that, and then something might coalesce from there. Okay, so that is the kind of note that I'm talking about taking right now.
Yeah, I concur. I did a lot of our attendance notes were really going into like taxonomy and botanicals, finding out the scientific name or where these things exist, and then from that drawing associations, right? And when we're walking over here, I saw these sort of spiky sword-like plants, and I was like, Sansevieria. My dad calls those mother-in-law tongues. And that's what they're called in Spanish, lengua de suegra. And then there's also called the sword of St. George. So then like, woo, all this stuff starts happening, and then you have a poem.
Yeah.
So.
And with animals, there are a lot of ways that all humans throughout history, as far as we know, have interacted and like attached meaning to animals, maybe even more than plants. So that's just kind of another piece of the puzzle.
So we encouraged you all to bring with you something from the world, and maybe you did, and maybe it got away from you, but we brought some stuff out here. So I don't know the name of this one, but it's a soft wood, which means it's not a big, sturdy, very textured trunk. It's slim, and it takes up to 10 years to sort of get it any girth, and it has a silver green color in the trunk, and from far away it looks like a pine or a fir of some kind, but it has these very velvety fringes, and it drops these vine pods, these very subtle small vine pods. So some of these are for texture. Some of them, like this California white sage, which people bundle up and burn, is a very pungent smell, and so it will get on your fingers, but it has a very velvety, sort of veiny leaf. We have good old rosemary, which you can just like just like actually for me, and I know for a lot of people who have like different anxiety issues, when one of the directions is go outside and put your bare feet on the ground, on the earth or the grass or whatever, and like we had this huge rosemary bush that grew out of control, and like I just go and like it's literally that big, and then I just smell really, really good, and I feel really, really good because all the oils are coming out. There's some bougainvillea. This is bay leaf, so when you dry this, you put it into soup. But some of these you have to crush or bruise the leaves a little bit to release the oils. If you have a lavender sprig, like you do, the leaves themselves are velvety. They have these sort of scalloped ridges. But if you have a little purple bloom inside the little cone, you can pinch that little purple flower, and it'll release the lavender oil. Citrus leaves also, if you squeeze them, right? So, pass things around, touch things on your table, or look at them if there's. You can have associations, or they can be brand new to you. Some of them are just for color. I know that like bougainvillea has a sort of tissue paper, heart-shaped thing going on. I already heard today that somebody has a bad association with that. So you never know what people's interactions with these natural things have been.
That brings up something good, which is I think when we there's been a lot in our culture lately about mindfulness, and some of it has started being divorced away from. It kind of has turned a little bit into like, there you are in the world by yourself, and you're supposed to make yourself feel better, which I think is really just a lie to make you go to your job more days in a row. And not, you know what I mean? So the kind of mindfulness that you may have been practicing yourself involves like coming together and being mindful together and remembering that like it's not all on you. So if anyone did bring anything, feel free to bring it out. Tisha, I think you brought something and you had kind of a funny thing to say about it.
Yes. Was it funny? I'm funny.
I think it's cool.
I just looked it up though. Can I share what I saw that?
Yeah.
So it attacked me this morning as I was walking out of the house. I have a pencil cactus that I've had now for probably about 13 years. When I got it, it was just like a small little potted plant my sister gave me because pencil is teacher, writer. She thought it was funny. And it is now taller than I am in an outdoor pot. Yeah, it's huge. And every once in a while it throws branches at me. And some of you may have seen it when it has the red tips. It's called fire sticks. But I just learned today that it is actually called a euphorbia, which is kind of cool. And that the latex sap that comes off of it is toxic, which I probably shouldn't be touching it on my face. I was like, well, let's not do that. So yeah, it's my pencil cactus. I've had it for a very long time. And whenever I make succulent gifts for people, like when my brother graduated, I make gifts.
She's a thief.
Are you?
Right there.
Yeah, you take cuttings, right? Like I always make sure I have one of these in whatever gift I give because I feel like now this is like me.
Yeah.
Does it have hallucinogenic properties?
I don't know, but I'm gonna look more into this toxicity and see if it can.
It says euphorbia.
Right?
Sounds like
Gonna look,
euphoria.
yeah, I'm gonna see.
So, that kind of looping back to my unfinished thought from right now is that, no, that's okay. I'm the one who did not finish the thought. Just as the kind of shift in mindfulness away from like productivity and like feeling great towards like being real together, if that plant has something toxic or if the bougainvillea has like a negative association, like the point of today being together with good smelling plants, like we're not trying to feel bad together, but like there are toxic things, there are heartbreaks that like a beautiful flower reminds us of. So in the next few minutes of writing, like I just want to really put into the room, like you don't have to write about rainbows and butterflies, but you can write about butterflies. Does that kind of make sense? Like the negative is part of the whole thing, right? Okay, cool. So did anyone else bring something? Okay, if not, what'd you bring?
Well, I see it's not that much nature.
It is. It's nature.
I mean, I thought it was a rock and it looked like a person, like
Yeah.
it was. But now I'm thinking it might be concrete or something. I don't know if it's actually nature. So.
Okay. Question for someone's poems: is concrete nature? Cool. Yeah. If you would pass it, and people can just kind of look. Anyone else? Okay. So.
I was like, maybe I shouldn't because now I just read that if it gets like it can be fatal. That's what it says. If there is eye contact, blindness can occur and ingestion of the sap can be fatal. I mean, I'm not going to eat it, but.
Just don't tap it on your head anymore.
Okay.
That makes me think of like how in different tastes that we like acclimate to as humans, like bitter is supposed to be an alert of poison, but we've cultivated a palate for bitter flavor. Like that was nature's way of letting us know get away, and we're like maybe a little bit, like I'll just have a little bit of this, and just how we like use toxins and poisons in a lot of ways, topically or internally. It has not deterred us.
Sushi that can kill you.
Right?
I now don't remember. I just had it around because I picked it up somewhere.
It looks like to me like sand. Like
Yeah.
I could have gotten it at the beach. I mean, I could have gotten it.
Oh yeah.
like sand that came together.
I vote nature.
Like a sandstone.
All right. So we're gonna write. We're gonna offer we're gonna write twice. For the first sort of moment of writing, we're gonna offer you two kind of paths to wander down. And you're writers, so hopefully you're renegades, rebels, anarchists, and you will literally not listen to anything we say if you get an idea of what you want to be writing. But we're gonna offer 2 paths, and then we'll like kind of set a timer and we'll just write for a while and then kind of come back together. So, do you want to describe a path?
Sure.
Do you want me to describe a path?
I would say there's a prompt and then there's what needed to happen. So I'll deliver one prompt and then Rachel will deliver a prompt or path, and then you can choose one to write to or combine them or ignore them. So select one or more of the items that you connected with, some of the things on the table, some things somebody showed or passed around.
Maybe something someone said, like someone said rabbit, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about that.
Sure. So wherever you're writing your notes, your process, start a short writing entry. Begin an entry where you want to find out more about the thing. For example, the properties of that thing, any scientific names, any places where it's found or native to, or if it has migrated, any symbolic associations to it. And then do some descriptions. So first, what is this thing? And then some descriptions, and that's where you would get into sensory information, textures, proportions, sizes, colors, scents, shapes, etc. And then begin your associative writing. So the reminders, the memories, the ideas, the connections that this thing is a portal to. So I'll write these things on that board over there, just to remind us.
Should we be like using the internet to research some of this stuff?
No
Or
one's
just
gonna yell at you if you look at your phone.
memory?
You can look at your phone. Yeah, cool. Okay, go for it on that path. I'm gonna set up another one. And I'll also take notes about this path down here. Showing my back to the camera. Hello, if anyone's live streaming. Okay, so for this path, you're gonna set a time frame. So this could be this morning, since you woke up. This could be the past 24 hours or this week. And then you're gonna make a list. So you're gonna start with a list and then kind of see where it goes on this path. So it's gonna be a list of words or sentences of observations or interactions in the time period. Something you encountered or crossed paths with. What you saw, but also what you heard, what you smelled, what you tasted, what you touched, what you kind of felt out of the corner of your eye. You could retrace a path that you take typically, like from where you park into your house or down to pick up your child from school. And so I'm gonna sort of write a list, and you can kind of take it as like a pulse of, okay, now write the next item, now write the next item. So you'll end up with kind of a longer list, and then you can kind of go back and build off of that. So the first one is gonna be an observation or impression of weather, light, or sky. And birds and other animals. Plants, indoors and out. A plant you know the name of. A plant you can only describe. You don't know the name. Physical sensation. human interaction. Humans or animals, probably, or plants. Something someone said. Something tuck in your head. So maybe this is a song hook. Or kind of a turn of phrase that someone used that you noticed.
See the first one?
Or music. A current event. Sometimes you can write obliquely about that. Something that you would know refers to that, but somebody else might not. A memory and what sparked it. And the last one is that you write to someone. You speak to them in whatever you write in the next line. So that's called a vocative sentence. Maybe it's yourself. So we're gonna keep going for about 10 minutes of writing. If you need anything, come on up and we'll talk about it. finish whatever line or sentence you're writing. And it's nice how like sort of quiet it got in here. You can't resist saying whatever you write. Doesn't have to be that deep. It doesn't have to be flowery. It's just whatever you wrote.
So this is the part where we're going to, since part of the way attendance was written is that we wrote in observance and paying attention to our paths, but then we would come together and sort of like switch papers, literally. And so sometimes her observations about her world or an animal or whatever would because it's hard to stay in your lane, like, oh, there's an elm tree, but I don't mention the hummingbird, that's it. Of course I mention the hummingbird, that's it, right? And, you know, you walking under
a favorite tree.
canopy or something, the bamboo thicket where your bird of flock friends would
Birds lived.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable passing my journal, but if you wrote on a computer or if your journal needs to not leave your possession, then there's some paper here. You don't have to copy everything, we don't have time for that, but maybe write like a line on a piece of paper that you're willing to pass. Who might need a sheet of paper? And if you could just pass it to whoever. And then I think the logistics of passing are kind of hard without a circle, but if we think of the circle as going this way, and then this way, and then that way, does that work for everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and there's a reason that you're not gonna copy anything that you see. You're gonna read it and just kind of, and then move on. Does that make sense? Okay, so.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. So, are we writing, each of us writing our lines on the same paper and passing it, or like each person should have a separate paper?
Yeah, every person should have a different paper, or journal, or whatever.
Can we maybe just leave our computers and our notepads and move one seat over so then computers don't have to like
all walk around?
Or just all use paper?
Oh, maybe people, instead of moving their objects, they sit one seat over.
Right.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Because we're reading each other's.
Like musical chairs.
Yeah, so you can just send the paper over there.
Wait,
We're
just
saying
if it's-
some people on computers.
Yeah.
Oh,
if
it's
you're
on the
writing on the
computer.
paper, right?
So yes, but we're not you said we're not copying anything.
Not
we're
copying anything.
writing
just-
anything new at this point.
Not writing anything.
I like gallery
So,
walk.
Yeah, like a gallery walk.
So teacher you
Let's do
got.
Yeah, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Move in the mix.
Move is
Just a good way
good.
to, like,
And then if you would prefer not to, just grab a blank piece of paper and leave it at your spot, and then we'll be like, oh, blank piece of paper, now I'm gonna contemplate that.
And we're just observing, right? Yeah, you're just reading and being
Good
informed.
question. Let's do it in a somewhat orderly way.
We can do the snake thing.
yeah.
Yeah, do
Can you
the
push
same.
your chairs in so people can walk by you?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, library manners. Oh wait, give me a second.
Perfect, beautiful.
So the snake, yeah.
So the snake,
I'm
yeah. So
snaking.
you all will walk this way, and you'll walk. No, that doesn't make sense because it's gonna be harder to get people out of that corner.
Go this way, we're going
Yeah,
this
you
way?
go that way,
Okay.
and then you all go that way. And then
Oh,
we
I'm
all
going the
go
wrong
this
way. Tell me your name again.
Sibel.
Sabelle.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Am I reading
my papers are
Yes, all my notes. Read them all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we're good.
Do we have, like, we look and then move, or?
You can read it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess look and move.
Oh, nice.
You don't have to read all of it. It's just a lot.
So vulnerable. Thanks for sharing, you guys.
There's a lot of toxicity in here. Look at this. How can I use it if I play and how they're gonna defeat the men? Ooh.
I'm sure that in his historical context, it was very useful for women to know which ones were poisonous for their own protection. Did you read about that lady who was slowly poisoning her husband by putting Visine? Apparently, Visine
Yeah.
over a long period of time is quite toxic. And these tiny little clear, tasteless drops.
I'm gonna be really careful when I lubricate my eyes,
Yeah,
cause you know, it rolls down your face.
Yeah.
All right, move along if you have gotten paused. aren't gonna be able to see everybody, so you'll just probably get to see one or two.
Oh, there are notes. Oh, the notes.
Well, there's a bit of a backlog. So I
Sorry,
can't
I
move
was
yet.
ready.
Jump off, let's move it, people. We got time.
Laughing at people's commentary.
Alright, move along again.
I like how by design this is quite ephemeral. Like you don't get to sit with the other person's writing. You have to sort of just witness it and then move on to the next thing.
Like walking through a museum.
Yeah.
I was moving back.
And it's sort of against ownership. It's not, it doesn't belong to us, and it's not for us to sort of.
Yeah, totally.
It's for us to witness and then move on.
Yes, I think you guys are going up to that end where my computer is, I think, right?
I don't
No,
know.
they come here, from there you go back here.
Oh, yeah.
The front row is supposed to go back
Oh,
this way.
Let's go here. Okay.
Oh, I didn't go wrong then. I don't know what I'm doing. Wait, where
No,
is
you
this?
should
I
go
stopped
to
there.
here.
You
Or
should go
to there, you can go
there.
that way then.
You should go here, Tisha, and then back there.
But this row where? Here.
And then back. Yeah.
Really whatever, just reading stuff.
Just read some stuff.
Just gonna dance around the room like a weirdo. That's what I do best.
Scared of that pencil. Pencil there.
Alright guys, maybe look at one or two other things. Maybe you just even notice how someone lays something out on the page or their handwriting, and then head back to your spot. Back to your spot, back to your spot.
I totally see it. I was like,
Sarah, pumpkin pie or just two for
We're right on time. We're right at, Okay, so let's continue with writing. In the same way that all of our observations belong to us in our context, sometimes when someone adds to it, or they observe something that was missing from our periphery, that enhances our observation or our witness, and makes it in some way into our documentation. So when we were saying we're not gonna copy down people's work, that's not what we're doing, but something from the other writing may have inspired you to also notice that thing, because we're living in a similar environment.
Right. So when you begin to write again, like I know there's a specific thing that I read that really is still sticking with me. And there's also the way that someone's handwriting looked that I'm really interested in. But I'm not gonna say, I'm gonna not attribute those things to myself. Like I'm not the one who started thinking about like oak trees and mothers and daughters. So I'm gonna attribute that. I'm gonna say someone in the room, or the woman in the black shirt, or something like that that's like respectful, preserves people's privacy and distance, but you're like honoring and attributing that came from the world around you. Does that kind of make sense?
And you may have done this with, for example, sometimes when people sit and people watch and they get ideas, they're saying a little boy in a blue striped shirt is dancing near his mama tenderly, grabs him. So you have experience writing about other humans and giving them sort of a personhood and a dignity, but also describing them because they were there, they existed. You're not erasing them and you're not tamping down their existence. So similarly, the way that you attribute something written, if for example, you did indeed read about an oak tree and that person's associations, and then that reminded you, it gave you an association, attributing it tenderly.
Right. Right. And you understand like boundaries and privacy. Like I know Rocio, so if I see something she wrote, in the context of this project, I'm like, oh, Rocio said that the cats wouldn't come down from the roof today which is like a standard situation. Like I'm gonna use her name, but if I remember one of your names, but I don't really know you, I'm not gonna like put your name right now. Does that make sense? Just like using normal respect that we sometimes seem to be reminded of. So the next piece, Rocio kind of described this before, but you could take the notes and turn them into a different work. You could copy your notes over in a different way. You could be like, and then turn to a fresh paper and write. And that also would be based on what you've just done. Does that make sense? Like, whatever you do next is based on what we already did, right? So maybe this was just like a writing meditation, and now you're gonna go back to your murder mystery that is gonna be a bestseller, and you're gonna write us in your thinking notes. You know? So really, it's up to you. Does anyone have any questions or feel like they need a little steering before they feel inspired to keep writing a little longer?
Yes, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So you're just gonna go back to writing. We're gonna write for 5 to 7 more minutes.
So you can either keep writing exactly what you were writing before you were interrupted. You can incorporate some of the things that you encountered into that writing. You can digest these long paragraph notes into a poem somehow, or turn it into a story or a different entry. Or if you have, remember, there's a prompt and then there's what needed to happen. Something totally different to spark in your mind, then do that. Just
Do you want me to give an example?
sure.
So I was writing, if you pass on my notebook, I was writing about this toxic plant, and I figured out as I was writing more and more details, and I realized how I'm going to work it into my play. And then as I was walking around on someone's paper was something about desert sand not being suitable for concrete, and I'm like, well, my play it's set in the desert in the Imperial Valley. So what can I use desert sand for? Can I use it for adobe bricks? And it started me thinking about other ways that I would implement these natural elements into my play. So I will give you guys a shout out if this play's ever produced.
On Broadway, our names and lights.
Right, and so that there's an example. Like I can start writing a scene where it's already like taking the characters are doing something in the sand, and the toxicity, like it's too much. I need to go home now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. I'm done.
Maybe the muse has struck, or maybe you're like, okay, I'm just gonna keep writing because it's Saturday morning and that's what I feel like doing.
And
So.
you had a unique clarification over here?
Yeah, okay. Or I don't have anything I feel like to write about.
Yeah.
Right, so you can continue with what we were doing before was descriptive writing. One of these plants or a plant that you have encountered today, or you can write about, for example, the sky and the light, the weather, our current natural situation that we're all dealing with this weekend. And you can be very clinical about it, like get scientific and just write a list of words, or one of those things may spark an association, which is a memory or a feeling or an idea, an emotion, a concept.
Yeah, so
There's no pressure for a finished product, which might be confusing because where am I going? You're just writing.
Yeah, and we are going to share this next piece. So if that has held you back in any way, just the next piece will not be shared. finish writing kind of whatever line or sentence you're on, take a breath. Did anyone come here today and not expect to write anything? Yeah, so you're welcome.
Also, if you were, I'll say what Social Foster at the beginning of his book Atomic Aspects has a little quote that says, "If you wanted plot, go read Huck Finn." Right? Where like if whatever ideas of finishing a thing, maybe being open to sometimes writing for its own sake, even if it doesn't have a direction, and that in the hopes that it may yield something that will take a shape at some point.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having us.
So happy.
Oh, good.
Are there any questions?
Oh yeah, we are, whatever. We
Yeah.
want to just make sure we don't,
10 minutes?
Encroach on your.
No matter.
You're good. Yeah.
So if you have questions about this sort of disjointed writing process, or
for us.
what it is to write with another person, or whatever.
Where can we get this book?
You can get it at all the usual, we carry copies around with us, you can get it from us now. But also, you can get it at like small press distributors or
The big online
Schmamishmon. And our press is really cool. It's called the Operating System. It's in Brooklyn, but they have a really beautiful, amazing back catalog on their website. So you can also get it there.
And they specialize in hybrid writing. So if you're looking like, who's going to publish this? This is weird letters and snippets and collage. I don't even know what. Like that's exactly what they're interested in. So yeah. So independence. Because we're poets, we don't have any illusions of anything, right? But instead what you get is a lot of committed people who are curating sort of an idea, like what is poetry for? So I will then find people who do those things and make their books a thing in the world, right? So that there's a kind of...
I have a question. This is an issue that I work with all the time. How do you know when you're done?
Great question.
Because it sounds like you're always in process.
Hopefully you have a deadline, because that is the best way to know. If you don't, I think setting, I erased it, hilarious. Setting an amount of time and just being like, okay, then you can call your book like what I wrote in January 2016. And then that's accurate and it's true.
So the prompt we gave ourselves was like a year, right? So luckily we had 12 months, and every month we had like 2 meetings, and one of them was to share notes, and the other one was to share finished poems. So literally we had, and then we had each other to be accountable to, right? So we had to show it to somebody, and it was like, this was January, this was May, this was September.
But then, by the end of the year, things got a little blurry. But that, as they should, you know.
Right.
But then we were like, okay, it's January 6th. Like, the book really needs to be, we need to wrap this up.
Did you revise?
Sort of.
Yeah.
There was a part of the year where I just had like such a massive amount of notes that I ended up for that month just selecting like a selection of the notes, for example.
Because this sounds like a throwback to beat poetry. First word, best word,
yeah.
just out there.
Right, first word, best word. That's a great question. The funny thing about this project is I think at least, my first book of poetry was like, I'd write the poem and then I'd kind of transform it, and it was just like all getting like tighter and tighter and tighter the whole time. And this was an experience of like letting go of a lot of that stuff. But I would say like my tendency is not to be like first word, best word, but part of this book was to kind of try to embrace that a little. But yeah, my first book, I probably like revised at least 8 times, maybe more. Like each poem was probably revised that many times, and then the manuscript itself was like,
Yeah, and it also depends on like your editor or publisher and what they sort of see beyond it. They really are like these sort of mediums, and they can like intuit what this book wants to be beyond the ego of the writer, and they'll try to shape you in that way or push you. And for me, it's been a lot of really hands off. Where both books were like, cool, yay, that's what happened. So I guess I don't subscribe to like either this way or that way. Like so, first word, best word is an exercise in authenticity or spontaneity or my truest feelings or whatever. And then when I revisit it, I'm like, did I really mean that, or do I still mean that? maybe, maybe not. So I give myself permission to like adjust here and there.
A lot of times, but then you just quit at some point because you're like, well, I have to stop doing this now. It's our extremely scientific answer. Science.
Well, as someone who's read it, I kind of feel like it's a process, an art of process, and that's like a right. So we're seeing their notes, and then you're seeing what those notes, what poems came out of those notes, and like you're seeing something develop. So I don't know. I wouldn't call that. I mean, the notes are right. I mean, I guess. But then they take those notes and they're like changing them. And,
Yeah.
It's a beautiful book.
Thanks
I'm so
for
happy you're
being
here.
Thanks for having us.
I did have a question. Okay, sorry. What was like the biggest surprise that came from the process of writing the book over the year? Or like the best surprise?
I mean, so surprise, if I take that out of it, I mean, what Rocio said about like when are the notes actually the work? I kind of went into it with this question of when do the notes become the work, which actually I guess is the answer about revision and when is it finished, right? So I thought I was worried and hopeful that my writing process would change through kind of putting ourselves through this year, and it did change. And the surprise is now I don't know how to write.
Without Rocio?
Well, not necessarily without Rocio, but like the surprise is kind of afterwards. But this is maybe true for anyone who has finished an important work or has published. Like sometimes you're kind of left in this like you're through the rapid and now the river is still, and it's like I'm not really being pushed anymore. So what do I do? And there were so many like thoughts and feelings and sensations that were channeled through the book. But then I was like, oh, I need to like kind of live for a while and let some more feelings, like the deepest parts of me, I felt like they needed to kind of refill or something. So that was a surprise to me. It doesn't matter, like someone could have told me that and maybe did tell me that, but I still was like, man, this kind of sucks.
I've been,
Yeah.
You put all that into something and then it's like you have to start all over again and relearn.
It's like postpartum for a book.
Yeah. I do think the good thing about attendance has been that we've been able to do things like this and like facilitate attendance type things. So it's not really ever over. Like Rocio will text me and be like, I just read like October 12th last year, guess what we were doing?
Oh, I use it as a personal almanac, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, we also, like this time of year we had a fire, or like since I'm a Californian, so I both have fire anxiety and drought anxiety. So I'm just like dousing my entire house with water in case an ember can travel 25 miles, you guys, okay? So I'm like, and at the same time I'm like, I'm just
Thanks for that.
Answer that. Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, nature is pretty brutal, and I think I don't know that I was surprised. I feel like I've just been operating like this for a really long time, and I just kind of made a book out of it. So I'm like, welcome to my normal.
Yeah, I do think more in our interpersonal lives, somewhere along the way, Rocio, we were like, what are all these emotions? And I was like, well, what did we think was going to happen if we were going to write together? And if you read the book, like, what did we think was going to happen? Like, through the end part of the book, that actually comes in a couple times, I think.
Yeah.
Like, so writing is playing with fire, collaborating is definitely playing with fire, and it's definitely worth it to build trust and build vulnerability. But it's also great to do that over the period of years. If anyone is thinking about collaboration, or even just like having, I know some people have like, does anyone here know Rachel Warecki? A bunch of you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's on our leadership team.
Yeah. So the way I met Rachel is a long story, but she'll like meet with people, right, and have like sort of a writing accountability partner, or whatever it is. So even if you're not writing literally together, I know part of what this organization does is you're submitting together, you're collaborating that way. So yeah, I just encourage like respect, tenderness, and slow burns. I'm a big fan of the slow burn as you build relationships and as you become sort of a community of writers. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we've got. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. This is amazing.
If you want to keep one of the little guys, like you can make a super pasta with it later. There's rosemary, there's bay leaves, there's some white sage.